Legend Total War here, and today I'm pleased to be able to present to you guys with my review for Total War Warhammer 3. A lot of time and effort's been put into gathering the information to present to you guys with a extensive review that's, I guess, summarized as much as possible. So I really don't want this video to get blown out to be 2 hours. Really, I could talk about Total War Warhammer 3 for like 10 hours. There's so many elements to it, but really what I want to cover is the core elements, the things that really make up Total War Warhammer 3, which in my opinion are the battles, changes to the various battle modes, the various changes to the campaign, and of course the narrative. Now I'll be comparing Total War Warhammer 3 to the Race of the Vortex campaign in Warhammer 2, not to Mortal Empires. I'll be comparing Mortal Empires of Warhammer 3 to Mortal Empires of Warhammer 2. Now, to give you guys a bit of perspective about how much time I've spent on Warhammer 3 so far, pretty much every single waking moment has been me playing Total War Warhammer 3 since I got access to it on the 10th of January. I've clocked 742 hours on Steam, but really that number should be more like maybe 550 hours, because I do tend to leave this game on when I walk away from the computer. But I have managed to achieve all of the Steam achievements, and maybe I'll release a guide on how to get those achievements if you want to know how to cheese it, because some of them are very, very cheesable. But yes, I have gone through every single campaign, every single narrative, and I think I know the game pretty extensively at this point, but not completely. It takes thousands of hours to truly understand the changes to Total War game. Anyway, let's start with the battles for Total War Warhammer 3. I'm going to structure this review into 3 parts, into the battles, into things that happen on the campaign map, and then the narrative. So in terms of the land battles, which are sort of like the bread and butter of Total War games. Now, another thing to point in mind as well is that this review is entirely campaign based, so I'm not talking about multiplayer at all. So if you're looking at this review for a multiplayer side of things, I'm not the person to be dealing with that. I have done absolutely no multiplayer, even though there are multiplayer achievements. I have done no multiplayer. So this is purely based on campaign related battles. Now, let's just talk briefly about land battles, because in terms of the difference between Warhammer 1 and Warhammer 2, there really isn't that much difference. There's, army abilities, which they don't have a gigantic impact on. They're cool. All of them are fine. I think Cinch has some of the most powerful ones just because he can do it so often. And some of the weaker ones are Nurgle, but it's just the Chaos Gods that get those ones. In terms of battle balancing, it does seem to be a little bit better than in Warhammer 2. It's you are not super punished for having melee infantry in your armies. Of course, I still believe that the meta is magic, missiles, and monster, even though it's gravitated less towards that, I suppose, because a lot of the low tier missile units don't have as much range as like the High Elves did in Warhammer 2, so it's not quite as pronounced. Now, in regard to Cathay, their yin-yang system kind of allows for, or even encourages, a more balanced build. I did battles where I had armies where I had entirely archers, and then I would replace some of those archers with some peasant spearmen, and my armies actually performed better because of the yin-yang system, because those peasant spearmen actually held the line better than those archers. So I would say that land battles are pretty good, but more or less, if you're familiar with them in Warhammer 2, you'll be familiar with them in Warhammer 3. Not too much has changed in that regard. Alright, but what I really want to spend some time on are the minor settlement battles and the siege battles. The survival battles I'll talk about in the narrative section. So this video here, all the work really just comes down to information. It's not going to be like super flashy edited. This is going to be the first video in a while that's going to be 1440p. And unfortunately, editing videos in 1440p is just an absolute pain. Like, the render times are ridiculous. Now, because I do daily content, it's just not feasible for me to make this video and like have it super polishedly edited, because I've had to do other videos and get other things organized. I just don't have, I've had one day to basically do this. That's all I can dedicate to it, because I'm not a review channel. I don't like putting in, 4 weeks into a super polished edited video, because at the crux of a a review, I feel like it's all just about the information and opinions and just showcasing a little bit here and there. But of course, if you want a super polished review, there's always Mandalore Gaming. I'm not even going to try to compete with that level of polish. What I'm going to do here is just try to get my opinions across, which is ideally, I think, what a lot of people are after. So, minor city battles. I think minor city battles are excellent. A massive improvement over Warhammer 2, and I think the majority of the settlement designs are really good. There's a couple that are a bit but I think the way that they play out, both on attack and defense, are really engaging. If you've been watching my live streams, you'll know that when I'm fighting a lot of these minor city battles, I'm not really reading the chat much because I'm really concentrating on making sure that everything's under control, because there's a lot of things going on. It's a lot better than just having a land battle for these minor cities. And in many ways, I think that minor settlement battles for Total Warhammer 2 is one of the best features about it. Now, we've had minor settlements battles before, so I'm not going to say this is an entirely new feature, but it is new for Total War Warhammer, and what they've done works really well. So the main way to sort of go about it is just holding on to one choke point when defending, that is, and you know, putting towers wherever needed. You don't have enough supplies to put towers everywhere, and I just think you've got the options that you need to overcome massive odds. And when in the attack, you've really got to focus your efforts. I mean, you kind of can focus on capturing all points if you're fast enough. Utilize your faction's strengths against the enemy's weaknesses, and I think that these maps here really utilize that in terms of allowing for different styles of gameplay, not just have missile spam. You can't just like put a bunch of missile units here and just shoot them all to death, because they won't put all of their units there just to begin with. You're going to have to contend with the towers, and some factions' towers are simply more powerful than other factions' towers, and I think that that's really well done. So big thumbs up for me in regard to minor settlement battles. Now we want to go into the walled settlements, which has a similar sort of workaround with it, with the rework, where you still use supplies and you still got choke points and everything, but you've got walls, and some of the capture points are a little bit different. Now, as much as I was really happy with the minor settlement battles, I'm kind of unhappy with the walled settlement battles. So what we've got here is Altdorf. All the old Warhammer 2 settlements are out. I mean, they were all really, really small. It was one of the huge criticisms of Total War Warhammer 1 and 2. And we've got these really big maps. Now, part of the problem with it is tactically, they're not very good, basically. There's a lot of problems with the design of a walled city. So, first thing I really want to talk about are dockable areas. They just don't work. You know, Creative Assembly made a point of advertising all the dockable areas on the map, and they just don't really function very well. So when an archer unit is docked on an area, they'll get a slight stat boost to their range, but the problem is that they just don't shoot. Their line of sight is like permanently blocked. However, if you, let's just pretend this was an archer unit, if you just do this, right, that's not docked. They'll actually fire properly. So dockable areas just straight up don't work. That's definitely not good. It's just broken, and that applies to walls as well. Fighting up on the walls isn't any more beneficial in Warhammer 3 than it is in Warhammer 2. So usually what I would do is just, you know, have a unit up on the towers, shoot as much as possible, and either withdraw, or if the unit's too slow, just let it die. Where you really want to be fighting for your life is in the streets. Now you can also see that there are some graphical problems in these settlements as well. That might just be my system, but every time I load up this particular battle here at Altdorf, we do have this. I don't personally care about this that much. I will talk about the graphics a little bit more in the end. I do think it's a very stunning game, but there are a few graphical glitches here and there. This is hardly game-breaking for me. Literally unplayable. No, I don't mind, and I'm sure this is like one of the first things that'll get fixed. If not, it might just be a problem on my system. I've got a GTX 1080 Ti. I feel like it runs this game pretty well. I get 60 FPS when I play it. When I first had early access to it, the frames were a bit iffy, but I feel like they optimized it as early access was going through, because I've had it for about a month now. Overall, I'm pretty happy with the optimization. Anyway, here are the problems with these sieges here. From a tactical point of view, It's just let's go from defense first. They're just not very good, okay? Because there's 2 points that you have to defend, right? And usually these points here are not very good defensive positions. Now you could think, well, why don't you just hold all the other positions? The problem here there is the amount of supplies that you have. You can't spread that out to all of these settlements, all these spots. So having your units. Having like 2 units here going up against all this, they're just gonna get annihilated. Because in most of these sort of situations, especially on campaign, when defending a walled settlement, you're going to be massively outnumbered. And so you need to make use of your numbers properly. And dividing your forces all over the place is not really the best way to go about it. It really is holding a choke point. And you're forced to hold this choke point here and that one. Because if you lose either of them, this bar gives them victory tickets. And they might just end up winning even if they haven't really done any damage to your army. So I think it would be better if there was just one victory location. Another thing is that when you're on the attack, the AI doesn't even bother trying to defend those positions. There's also blatantly huge blind spots in a lot of settlements, so I think the design of a lot of these cities is just not very good, at least in comparison to the minor cities. So I don't think that it's worse than Warhammer 2. I think it's a sideward step, but I think there's potential for fixing it. I just don't really enjoy the walled settlement sieges, either in attack or defense, anywhere near as much as the minor ones. I just think the minor ones are done so much better. So walls just aren't really that enjoyable for me. Now, luckily, the walled city sieges, they don't happen quite as often as minor city sieges on the campaign map. Now, another problem with building walls, because you can build walls in minor cities, right? I don't usually do it because if you build a wall, the AI will starve you out a lot longer than if it was unwalled. And because walled city sieges are sometimes more difficult to defend than unwalled city sieges, it actually puts you in a worse position. So usually I do build the garrison buildings on the frontier, but I don't build it up to tier 3 because it actually hurts my defensive position. Because I can 9 times out of 10 defend a minor city with just a garrison, because they'll attack, we hold a choke point, the towers do a lot of the work, and you can use your cavalry to recapture points, because you oftentimes get cavalry in the garrison, and you can tactically outmaneuver them. But in walled city sieges, it can be a bit iffy when you've got 66% attrition over a course of a few turns, and it's crippled you, and you really can't fight on the walls. The dockable areas are useless, and all they need to do is hold, your meager beaten up force has to spread out across 2 positions. I just don't think that these are the best that they can be. So it kind of gets a little bit of a, it's just neither thumbs up or thumbs down. I think it just needs a bit more work with the sieges there. But overall, I think the battles in Total War Warhammer 3 are about on par with Warhammer 2. There's some slight improvements here and there. Most notably, I think with the battle difficulty, I think people will enjoy that a lot more. The asymmetry between all the different factions, I actually enjoy them. Although there's definitely a unbalance I've noticed between certain factions just being straight up weaker than others. Most notably Nurgle. Nurgle seems to be pretty much weaker than every other race on the battlefield, largely just due to it's so slow and lack of ranged. Once they get Soul Grinders, it's a different story, but every other race seems to be a lot stronger than them on the battlefield. Most notable, strongest faction on the battlefield, I think, is Tzeentch, because of the barrier. The barrier is very, very powerful, and a lot of Tzeentch's units just do a ton of damage. Even if you're sort of going up against a technique that hard counters Tzeentch, Tzeentch has just got all of his bases covered. He drops bombardment spells down on you with his army abilities just from casting Winds of Magic. Just a very dangerous faction to go up against. Okay, now, next thing we want to talk about is campaigns. So I've done loads and loads of campaigns. So I'm going to jump into a Kislev campaign. This is the one I was doing on live stream. And just explain some of the changes that are going on the campaign map. There's not too much, I suppose, that's changed. It's, I think the load times are fairly much the same as well as Warhammer 2. There are 226 settlements on the map for Total War Warhammer 3, currently in the Realm of Chaos campaign. I imagine they will probably add more. It usually takes about 2 full turns to get from one settlement to another. There are a couple of exceptions. Sometimes you can get to a settlement in 1 turn. But yeah, if you look at the distance, like the distance between Volksgrad and Igorov is actually about 2 turns. The distance between Gerslev and Igorov is 2 turns. The difference between this one and that one, 2 turns. Whereas in Mortal Empires and Warhammer 2, a lot of settlements are compacted, and that only takes 1 turn to get from one to another. There are of course some exceptions like Lustria, but a lot of the settlements are quite spread out, but nothing too painful. Like the way that Lustria is designed in Warhammer 2, in at least Mortal Empires campaign, which I said I wasn't going to compare this to Mortal Empires, but just as an example, can be quite frustrating to navigate. But I think the way that they've mapped everything out in Warhammer 3 is pretty good. Now let's firstly talk about the economies and how buildings work. It's pretty much the same as Warhammer 2. There are some slight exceptions. So Kislev in particular has these 1 settlement provinces where it's just like a 10 build slot settlement, like one of their major settlements. This is only found in Kislev. You won't find that in Cathay or in the Empire. So if we go down to Reichland, for example, down here, Reichland has been downgraded from a 10 slotted province, Altdorf, to a 8 slotted one. You know, there are some... It was pretty cool to see that some of the existing legendary lords are in Warhammer 3, because that isn't the case in Warhammer 2. There are no Warhammer 1 legendary lords on the Vortex campaign for Warhammer 2. Now, none of them are playable, at least at this stage here, but it's cool that they are still there. So some notable examples of legendary lords that are from other Total War games, other Total Warhammer games, that is, that are present is Karl Franz, not Volkmar the Grim, not Balthazar Gelt, what's his name? Manfred is there, but not Gorst. The other vampire counts are not in it. There's a lot of Skaven. There's Clan Mulder. There's Rictus is over here, and Eschen is over here. Who's some other legendary lords? There's Ungrim. He's in there as well. So yeah, there's a few familiar faces. The Northskins aren't there. There's no greenskin legendary lords, at least none that I've seen. There's clearly going to be Chaos Dwarves. There's Tsar Nagrin's in the game, but this is occupied by placeholder factions at the moment, which was the case with Warhammer 2 when it first came out. All of the the Tomb King settlements were occupied by vampires, so I expect this is going to get fleshed out over time. So one notable change to this, and it's not that big of a deal, but if we have a look at the income breakdown, one thing that they've actually removed from the game is tax rates. Not that tax rates were ever that big of a deal to anyone except for the High Elves, but now there is just no tax rate modifier. You've still got modifiers, but what the tax rate did in Warhammer 1 and 2 was it was a modifier on a modifier, which is one of the reasons why High Elves were able to get such ridiculous income. So in this regard, it seems like when the Dark Elves and High Elves are reintroduced in Mortal Empires and Warhammer 3, unless they do get tax rates, I would say that the Dark Elves will take the place as the strongest faction over the High Elves, because the main reason the High Elves were so strong was because of their basically unlimited money. But yeah, apart from the economy, it still functions the same way. You get income generated, which can be modified. It's pretty transparent with that. You can get trade resources, sell those trade resources externally to other people that are at least reasonably friendly to you. But one really good thing is the diplomacy. So when we go into diplomacy now, let me just pick a faction that I don't have a trade agreement with, but I could get one. Okay, let's go with them. Okay, when you try to get a trade agreement, it actually gives you reasons why it is or isn't likely to succeed. And one thing that factors into it, at least with trade agreements, is too many trade partners. Now, what that simply means, I reckon they should rename that to you don't have enough trade resources. Basically, as you get more trade resources, you can get more trade partners, so which allows you then to get more tariff income. So at the moment, the -15 penalty simply means that I'm selling off all of my goods, and so I'm only selling a pitiful amount. But if I was to get either more of an existing resource or another resource, that penalty will go down. Then, of course, there's baseline evaluation, main threat, which is essentially great power penalty. But I think the diplomacy changes with Warhammer 3 are really good, especially quick deal. Not having to spend 5 hours going through each and every little option is really good. I mean, I don't have any options available to me here. But yeah, being able to go into a offer and then just make it work with balance offer and get the exact amount that you need saves so much time. No longer is it like, okay, I'll add an extra 100 here. Like they failed. Okay, I'll try another 100. You just get the exact number that's required straight off the bat. So that's really, really helpful. So you'll spend less time in diplomacy, but you'll get more done. That's the streamlining that's the way streamlining should be. So, and that's in regard to pretty much every diplomatic option. You can now trade settlements, which is good. I've actually been doing it a bit in this particular campaign. So with Castalton, he lost almost all of his territory, right? And I didn't want him to get wiped out because he's, you know, sort of my frontier border against the Demon Prince. So what I did in this campaign was I sent an army to go and capture these 3 settlements, and then I sold them back to him. And the thing is, eventually I'm just going to confederate him, so I'm just going to get those settlements back, but he's developing them up. I got some money from selling it to him, and he's keeping that bloody Demon Prince out of my lands. So it was worth selling him those regions, and it's good to capture certain settlements that might be good for your allies, and then gift them to them. Speaking on allies are now actually worth getting because building an outpost has a lot of benefits. So when you make an alliance, where's an example of I'm sure I've got one here. No, I don't. Because I've got... Where do I have my outpost in this campaign? Here it is. Okay, so when you have an alliance, your alliance partner can build an outpost in one of your major settlements. I think that also includes basically the first settlement in a province. This one here is considered the province capital. It's given a little bit of indication there. Even though it's not got 8 slots, an outpost can be put there. Now that allows them to recruit your units that are available to recruit from this particular settlement. So in this region here, I didn't build any recruitment buildings, so I imagined that my allies would only be able to recruit basic Kossars. But if they put an outpost here, they would be able to get access to snow leopards, war bear riders, elemental bears eventually. It's not limited to tier 3. It's a little bit of a myth out there. It's whatever is available to be recruited. Even if it's a tier 1 outpost, it can recruit anything that's there. It's just a matter of the price. And if we have a look at that, I'll just recruit somebody here to showcase it. Going in there, I've built an outpost in the northern provinces. I can recruit anything that they can recruit in the settlement that I've got the outpost. Right, so I can get the Wujing War Compass, but I don't have enough allegiance with selected factions. And you can get more allegiance. You get allegiance over time, but you can get more allegiance by getting ally missions. They currently don't have any ally missions for us, but the ally missions are pretty good because you usually have common enemies, and if you're going to go kill the person anyway, it's just a good way to get a bit of extra points. And you know, I have actually been putting units from other factions in my armies, and I've been liking it, so I think it's been worth it to get alliances. In addition to that, there's benefits when they put an outpost in your territory, in that you get a little bit more garrison and increases replenishment rate. So really, there's not much downside to having an alliance now, apart from they kind of drag you into wars every now and again. But in Warhammer 3, there really is a order tide versus chaos tide now, at least in the early stages of the campaign. If you're playing as an order faction, you know, one of the humans, it's a lot easier to do diplomatic deals with the Empire or Cathay, because we all have the same enemies. And the same thing with chaos. When playing as chaos, it's not too bad doing diplomacy with your other chaos brothers, even if you're of the aversion type. So for example, if you're playing as Sinch, it's possible for you to make a deal with Nurgle, even though you might think that they stink. So I think that the diplomacy changes in the campaign map there are excellent. In terms of the unique resources of every race, being you know, devotion for Kislev, devotees for Slanesh, food for ogres. All of that stuff just works really, really well. I think that's something that you want to play into. Even this politics mechanic here, which I thought I was going to hate, I actually ended up really enjoying because it does actually provide some meaningful bonuses. It's not super pervasive. The only problem I have with this particular one is that this is done automatically. I personally would have preferred it if you can't confederate him until you do that, and then once you've reached that point, you can then ask him for a confederation. It just does that automatically, and sometimes it can be really inconvenient to confederate him. Like, I actually want him as a military ally right now, because it would actually hurt my situation by confederating him, and I can't really stop my supporters from going up. You can also use some actions to get them down, but I didn't feel the need to do this. I guess that's if the campaign goes really belly up, and Castalton goes up. I actually don't know what happens if he gets there before you. You've also got these invocations here, and that all works pretty well. So yeah, and that's the same with all of the factions. I'd say that some of the strongest ones, Khorne's stuff is ridiculously powerful, especially his unholy manifestations. Nurgle's stuff is a little bit on the weak side. Sinch stuff is what, if it's in the control of the AI, you will come to loathe Sinch the most. Because the changing of the ways, when he halts your entire faction, when he switches your settlements, very, very frustrating. But when you play as Sinch, it's fun times for everyone, because it's very easy to get a lot of grimoires. So maybe that'll have to be overtuned. But the strongest faction in the game at the moment on the campaign map, I believe, is Khorne. The richest faction, I would say, is probably Kislev. But even though, like, I'm not making much money here, that's because we've got a lot of armies comparatively, so we're spending that money. But I think Kislev has the potential for making a lot of cash. But overall on the campaign map, I'm pretty happy with how they've done things. I think that the overall campaign experience is pretty good. I think the only real thing that I don't like about the campaign map is the Winds of Magic changes, but I've just kind of gotten used to it. I definitely prefer the old system where you just have a reserve amount and you can increase it with abilities and stuff like that, and knowledgeable trait. Now there's a maximum of 100. You can't go above that. And for demons, they have a threshold that they need to keep in order, or else they'll either get a bonus if they give it high, or a penalty if they get too low. Which I think that's the primary reason why the system has changed. But personally, I think that I would like it if it's possible to increase the maximum amount of Winds of Magic a faction can have. I think 100 is it's just, like, I get it's cheesing, but my personal enjoyment of the campaign, I would like to get more, just because I like to get big numbers of stuff. So being limited to just 100, I find myself just not manipulating Winds of Magic at all, except when playing as Sinch. So it's a system that is more passive, but is also less fun than in Warhammer 2. That's my only real criticism of the campaign map. Now let's move on to the narrative. I've got another campaign to prop up here. This is where there would be some spoilers. If you want to skip this part, I totally understand. But I need to talk about the narrative aspect of this, and which includes the story, in order to properly review this. But if you don't want to get, if you don't want to know what happens at the end of each campaign, then just skip this part. I'll put timestamps in there. Just go to essentially the end of the review, because a large bulk of the review is going to be talking about this. It's unavoidable. It's a big part of the campaign. You know, Total War Warhammer 3 at this stage has 3 elements: the battles, which are good. You know, don't really like the walled siege battles, but that's okay. I can get past them. I feel like it's the same as Warhammer 2. I just tolerate them. This campaign side of things, which I really enjoy, just doing my stuff on the campaign map, really enjoy it. And then there's the narrative. Okay, so this is the part of the game that I don't like. Okay, this is the negative part of the review. Now, in this particular campaign, I have finished the game. I have done all 4 of the Demon Prince Souls and won the final battle. You can still go into the Realm of Chaos, and we're going to do that and explain what happens. So we're going to start with the Dark Prince's Realm, and I'll explain basically what's going on here. So in Warhammer 2's Vortex campaign, which of course is what we're comparing it to, the game allows you to progress the story at your leisure. You have to collect the resources needed to do the rituals, but you have to press the ritual button when it's convenient for you. The AI will do it as soon as they can, but you don't have to, and you can keep collecting all of the resources if you absolutely need to, and you don't even have to participate in the race for the Vortex. Okay, and I'm not a huge fan of the Vortex, but I did a poll a few days ago, and this is what the results of that poll after 63,000 votes. Now, if I was to put my vote, I probably would have put it, I don't really care about the race for the Vortex campaign. I want to care about the race for the Vortex campaign. I think there's potentially a lot of elements to it that are interesting, but I would probably rate it in the 7 out of 10 mark, which is what the majority of you guys did. I definitely would not say I love the race for the Vortex, nor would I say that I hate the race for the Vortex. It's somewhere between these two here. And that's the sort of bell curve that we see from at least the 63,000 people that have voted here. Now, in terms of the reason why that's important is because the Vortex is the narrative campaign of Warhammer 2, and the Realm of Chaos is the narrative campaign for Warhammer 3. And just giving you guys the truth of it right now, I hate the Realm of Chaos campaign narrative. Not the actual story itself, but the actual missions that you need to do for this campaign. I don't dislike it. I don't just not enjoy it. I hate it. I think it's terribly designed to be really unfun. And as I was playing, because I hated it right from the get-go, and I hate it now. I would rate it 2 out of 10, like really, really badly. And I thought as I was playing it, come on, there's got to be something enjoyable in here for me to. I'll talk to other creators and see what they think about it. And the creators that I talked about were like, yeah, I don't really do the Realm of Chaos campaign. So like they do a couple of the souls and then they just forget about it more or less. From what I've spoken to them about. So I'm really curious to see if any of the other YouTubers are going to praise this. Very curious about that, because it's bound to be that somebody loves it. There's always going to be edges on the bell curve, and I just don't know where I stand. That's my big question here. Am I on the edge, or am I in the middle? Am I going to be in the majority, or am I going to be in the minority? And I suppose that I'll find that out when you guys play it. So I'm very curious about your review of Warhammer 3 when you guys get to play it. But let's talk about this and what's wrong with it and what's right with it about it as well. Now, the great thing about this particular campaign is they've also got a prologue campaign. Now, the prologue campaign is excellent, really, really good. It's a great tutorial. It really holds your hand at the start of it, and as you go along, it gives you more freedom. It's got a really good story to it. I really enjoyed the prologue campaign when I did it, so big thumbs up to that one. It's probably the best prologue campaign Creative Assembly has ever done, and it sets the scene for what happens here. But here comes the spoilers. This is what happens. Be'lakor has imprisoned Ursun in the Realm of Chaos, and Ursun's roar is not being heard in Kislev, and so they have like an internal winter. So an expedition led by Yuri Barkov, possibly the lover of Katarin, is going north to find Ursun and free him. But as he goes north, he encounters more and more chaos-corrupted things. He equips himself with chaos items to give himself more power to try to save Ursun, but then eventually becomes completely corrupted by chaos, manipulated by Be'lakor, and ends up shooting shooting Ursun in the heart with a bullet, but also renounces him, which is what really injures Ursun. So that is what happens before this campaign even starts. Then the advisor goes to the various factions that participate in this race, and he's trying to lift his curse on the Tome of Fates, and each particular legendary lord has a reason for going after Ursun. Kairos, who is blind to the present but sees the past and the future, he wants to get the eyes of Ursun so that he can see the present. Scarbrand wants to present Ursun's skull to the Skull Throne to get Khorne's forgiveness, so on and so forth. They've all got their own different reasonings, right? So the campaign begins, and it's just a total war experience to begin with. You know, you build your armies, conquer settlements, do your diplomacy, all that shit. All good stuff, right? Then on turn 30-ish, rifts open up, right? Allowing you to enter the Realm of Chaos. This one here is a Slaanesh rift. You can enter that one, and you can also close it. Now, if you don't close it, it causes huge amounts of Slaanesh corruption and eventually starts bringing out demons to deal with. Now, here's the thing. You can never permanently close any rifts. They always show up at the same time, but they're usually randomly aligned. So next time this one shows up, it could be a Nurgle-related one. Even after finishing the campaign, even after I close this, right? That can still reopen again. You can never be rid of them. These rifts, you will come to loathe them because they are such a huge nuisance, especially if you conquer the entire map, which I've done here. Well, almost the entire map, right? Because I've had to put heroes all over the place at specific points, and every 10 or so turns, I have to stop a bloody demon invasion coming through or close those damn rifts. There's a big drain on my economy, right? Even though I can afford it at this point here. It's just a big nuisance and a chore. Now, let's talk about the Realms of Chaos themselves. Okay, so turn 30, you go into the Realm of Chaos. Now, let's talk about Slaanesh first, because this is the only Realm of Chaos that is actually well designed. And the thing is, it's only well designed because you don't... you don't need to go for the soul necessarily. Well, you don't need to go for the soul, but you need to in order to finish the campaign. So you go down here. Every time you go down a portal, so you go into the portal, it goes down to the next level, right? And every time you go down, you get a tempting offer from Slaanesh himself, asking you to leave. And so you take a quick reward, and then he kicks you out of the realm of takes you out of the realm of chaos, and you can't enter again until the next rift opens up. But you get a reward, right? So as you keep going down, eventually the lowest level gives you the biggest rewards. So if you can resist the temptation, then you can do the quest, the survival battle. Now, survival battles, I think are fine. I enjoy them, but here's the big problem. You go through all of this effort, like each layer here takes a full turn to go down. So the shortest amount of time is turn 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8 turns is like kind of the minimum you have to spend in the Slaanesh realm. And what's the reward for getting the Demon Prince Soul of Slaanesh? Nothing. It's just you've progressed the story. Now, here's the big thing. As you progress the story, the demons that come through get stronger. But if you don't progress the story, guess what? They don't really get any stronger. So you get punished for pressing through the narrative. What the hell? There's no benefits, and you just get punished all the way through. Also, staying in the realm of chaos, even if you're a chaos faction, even if you're the chaos faction that is aligned with this realm, you'll get a pretty sizable penalty. So Nakari in this realm will get that trait. Now, it's particularly bad for non-chaos factions. They have 3 tiers of bad chaos trait. The 3rd tier is crippling. So you really want to not be in here for very long. So I think that the realm of Slaanesh is the best one because at least the rewards are good. Let's now move on to the realm that I think is the second best. Okay, so then there's the realm of Khorne. This one here is good because at least it can be done very quickly. So Khorne wants you to just smash up a bunch of crap, and then you can do the survival battle. They'll come at you if you're within range. So yeah, you can do this really quickly. It's really straightforward, and there's actually some rewards here. There's on the edges of the Chaos Realm some really good swords. The only downside is that the next time that you come into the Realm of Chaos, you have to give those swords back. No exceptions. Also, by the way, you have to send your faction leader into the Realm of Chaos. It cannot be a different legendary lord or any regular lord. So you can't just send like 20 lords into the Realm of Slaanesh to go and get all those rewards. You have to send your faction leader. So for example, if you play as Katerin and you get Kastalton, you can't send Kastalton into the Realm of Chaos. You have to send Katerin, right? You have to send your faction leader. And you get this Chaos Realm trait after about 2 to 3 turns, right? You get them very quickly. I'd say the only one that you can get in and out without a Chaos trait, because they're bad, is probably the Realm of Khorne, because that's the one that can be done the quickest. So Realm of Khorne is the second best designed out of all of them. And the quest, the survival battle is actually pretty easy because it's all just melee units. Now let's move on to the third best, or I should say second worst, of the Chaos Realms, which is Nurgle. So Nurgle's realm, also once you go into a realm, you can keep just switching through it. If you're like, I don't want to be here anyway. So Nurgle's realm has no rewards whatsoever. It's pure punishment, but it's fairly quick, right? The goal is you have to get to one of these points. It'll tell you specifically which one, and it's never the one that you start off with, right? There's 4 particular spawn points, right? And you usually have to go to the opposite one. So if you start here, you usually have to go there, right? That gives you 25% immunity to attrition, but only whilst in the realm of Nurgle, and only whilst you're in here this time. So I don't have the immunity to attrition since the last time I've been here. Right, you go in, there's these armies blocking the way, right, they're not that big of a deal. Nurgle's probably the easiest to fight in the battlefield, especially playing a cinch. You get through here, do that, then you rush back over here. You want to alternate between going in Force March and in Camp Stance. Force March to just get through this disgusting realm as quickly as possible, and then in Camp before getting there just to recover your losses. But yeah, you want to spend as little time in here as possible. Now, the Chaos trait for being in the realm of Nurgle is arguably the worst, especially if you're a melee-focused faction, because it reduces the speed of your lord by like 30%, which if you're playing as Nakari, that's not good at all. Same thing with Kairos, because he's fairly speedy, but it also reduces the melee defense of your entire army by like 20%. Really crippling penalty with absolutely no reward. And again, you don't get anything for getting the soul. And yet, it is not the worst realm. The worst realm is Sinch. This realm sucks. Absolutely sucks. It is pure pain. What are you doing? What are you doing? What are you doing? Pure pain, no reward, right? The thing is, like, you've got to in my opinion, you've got to incentivize the player to do this, right? It can't just be you get a cutscene at the end of it. If that's the case, then you only ever need to go through the campaign once, because once you've got the cutscene, you've seen it, right? There's only a different cutscene at the end, at the very, very end for each, and it's only like a couple of seconds, right? And we'll get to the end of it in a bit. So what goes on in the realm of Sinch, right? So you have to get down here, right? And one of these portals, which you won't know when you arrive, connects to that. Each portal has a respective portal. So, for example, that one might transmute you or teleport you to here. And then if you go back into it, it goes you back here. But you don't know. If you defeat an army, you can reveal a sigil, which will mark a certain portal. So if you get the two marks in the same one, you know where they go. If you go into this area here, it can give you various rewards. The rewards can replenish the damage of your army, give you global recruitment duration reductions for a few turns, or reveal essentially two sigils. Now the thing is, when you do that, you go into that area, it consumes all of your movement points, so you can't just get that and then go into a portal. Now the thing is as well, is that only one person can get a soul from each realm each time the rifts open up. So if you jump in here first, for example, and let's just say Grease's Goldtooth jumps in here as well, and you spend time getting these ones here, taking forever, and then Grease's gets to here before you and does that, guess what happens? Bang! Out of the realm of chaos you go, no reward for you. Okay? And you'll feel like a bloody fool for wasting your time with that stuff. So usually, I just ignore that. Here's how you cheese it, basically. Get into the realm of chaos, of Sinch, make a backup save, map all of this stuff, load the backup save, beeline straight for here. Don't bother with this stuff because the rewards are insubstantial. They're like growth bonuses, plus 90 for 9 turns. All the bonuses are based around 9 because that's the sorcerer's number. But all of them are insubstantial and temporary. You just don't want to be in this realm for as long as possible. You just want to get through it as quickly as possible. It's the most punishing, and also the quest battle at the end here, the survival battle, is possibly the most difficult. So I would usually recommend doing Sinch last because it's the most annoying. And yeah, bring a Doomstack. Okay, after you've done all that, you can pretty much immediately fight Bellicor, he's the antagonist of the campaign. Once you've done all 4 of them, you've got 40 turns to beat him. If you don't do that, you lose the campaign, right? Another thing is that if the others get 4 souls before you, I've wiped out most of them in this campaign, except for the Disciples of the Maw. You might be thinking, doesn't Greasus, not Disciples of the Maw, do it? If you eliminate Greasus Goldtooth, then the Disciples of the Maw take over. Now, if Greasus had a bunch of souls, they all get reset, so Disciples of the Maw don't get to keep them. So that's something that you can do. Same thing with Cathay. If you knock out the northern provinces, the western provinces take over. Although by the time you knock out Katarine, she's probably already confederated Castalton. So that's usually the case to eliminate them. But yeah, once they're gone from the race, that's probably the easiest way to deal with it. But anyway, if they do get all 4 souls, then they can go immediately to the realm of chaos to fight Bellicor. And if they do that, they win the campaign and you lose. However, if they've got the 4 souls and you don't, you can then transfer yourself to the realm of chaos and stop them in a battle. However, it doesn't eliminate them permanently. You have to keep doing it every 15 turns. Now the thing is, if more than one of them get it, then you have to repeat that cycle as many times as there are of them. So this can really spiral out of control if you don't do it. So this is a very in-your-face mechanic. You can ignore it to some degree, only at the beginning of the campaign. However, if you don't put the smack down on many of the factions by the time it gets to around turn 100, you are probably going to have a very awful time of the campaign, where even if you're dominating on the campaign map, you're just going to have to park your Legendary Lord in the Realm of Chaos and just keep swatting aside people trying to win the campaign from you. Very, very frustrating. And of course, these portals will just keep opening up. And, you know, at this stage here, these armies are essentially undivided coming through here. Can be extremely frustrating to deal with, and your garrisons are going to have a hard time against that, and they come in very high rank. And again, that only happens as you progress through the story. Now, let's just say you beat the story. What happens? You get a reward. Guess what the reward is? Everybody gets the same reward. You get Bellicor. Yeah, Bellicor. Now, voiced by Richard Armitage. That's great. I think he did a great job of the voice acting. but what the hell is going on with his skill tree? He doesn't even have a red line. He doesn't have a trait. I mean, he really should have a trait called First Demon Prince. I don't care what it does. It should have a trait. He's an empty shell of a legendary lord. This is the only reward that you get across all factions. Everybody gets the exact same thing. You get Be'lakor, and in many ways, Be'lakor isn't even better than an Exalted Greater Demon, or even like a Boyar, because at least a Boyar gets a red line. And Be'lakor's, like, he's got shadow magic, right? And that's great and everything. He doesn't reduce the cost of it. So he's not an amazing caster, which he should be. He's really just an amazing fighter. He is a very, very good melee fighter. But I felt like the reward was very insubstantial. And when I won this campaign, this was the first campaign I won. When I won it, I was unsatisfied with it. I just didn't really... As soon as I got this, I was just like, oh, okay, I'm done. I just, I don't want to play with it. I didn't really, it didn't entice me to do it. Now, in terms of the narrative, when you win the campaign, Kairos gets the Eyes of Ursun. Does that affect him in any way? Nope. The narrative is completely disjointed from the campaign. When Katarine wins against Be'lakor, does she save Ursun? Yep. Does that have any effect on the campaign map? Nope. When Skarbrand defeats Be'lakor and gets the Skull of Ursun and gives it to the Skull Throne, does it get any benefit? Nope. So you just get kicked out, you get Be'lakor, and no other benefit apart from, good luck, you're going to have rifts open up forever. So I think that the narrative side of this is extremely poorly done, really poorly thought out, really sort of pushes players to only play tall and not to play wide. You are not incentivized to conquer the entire map. This campaign is way easier if you just own like a couple of provinces, because you don't have to deal with as many portals, and you just focus on this stuff. That way you don't have to meet more people. The whole build an empire side of things is difficult to do, especially on the higher difficulties. Now, that might entice you to do it, because of the challenge, but I found doing it unenjoyable. Then that's me personally. Again, some of you guys might be on the majority of side of things and maybe you really enjoy it. I really can't say until you guys have played it, but at no point does this mechanic, this narrative, give you a attaboy, here's a potion, here's a something for doing this. I know that was a pain. Hey, have some +5 public order faction wide. Here you go, have some winds of magic or something. At no point does it do that. It's just like, haha, you gotta keep doing it. Lol. And I just found that really annoying. So that was my point there. Alright, now we get to this summary of it. So overall, I didn't really like the narrative. So I'm just going to open up a campaign over here and summarize my thoughts. So those are the battle, the campaign, and narrative reviews. Minor things to talk about as well are the... I think that the visuals of the game look great. There's a few few textures here and there are a bit off, but I think they'll fix that up. I think that everything's very well voiced. I like the voice acting. The Slaanesh stuff is really creepy, but I think it's supposed to be like that. The soundtracks are really good. I particularly like the Kislev and the Chaos Undivided soundtrack. I think they're really well done. It seems like the old Chaos soundtrack is completely out, because I noticed that when I go up against Warriors of Chaos or Norska, the old soundtrack has not played once yet. Maybe it'll be reintroduced in Mortal Empires, but I'm not entirely sure. So you will hear a lot of the time the Chaos factions, because I think the 4 mono gods, they all have the same soundtrack as their soundtrack. So overall, how would I feel about this game? Well, I've actually created a bit of a graph to sort of identify how I feel about this. Yay, graph time. Okay, so what I've done here is I created a quality. It's not perfectly discounted. It's supposed to give you a bit of an indication, right? So at the bottom here, 5 out of 10. Why not 0? Because no Total War game is going to get a 0 out of 10. Not even Thrones of Britannia. Even Thrones of Britannia is above this line. So, you know, Total War Warhammer 1 came out in, like, May 2015, and we're currently at 2022. The reason why this line doesn't progress any further is because that's when Warhammer 1 stopped being patched. And this is where Warhammer 2 stopped being patched, and Mortal Empires. Now, I've always felt that Mortal Empires is better than Vortex. Now, remember that Warhammer 3 is being compared to Warhammer 2, not Mortal Empires. Now, if I was to put a number on these two here, which I do think numbers are arbitrary, I would say that Warhammer 2 is a 9 out of 10 game, but Mortal Empires is a 9.5 out of 10. So where would I put Warhammer 3? Warhammer 2 is able to be better than Warhammer 1 on release. Where am I putting it? Unfortunately, in its current state, I don't believe that Warhammer 3 is better than the current state of Warhammer 2. However, I do believe it is better than the launch of Warhammer 2. Because Warhammer 2's launch was it had problems, basically. Not huge problems, but it did have problems. And it got better over time. So I predict that this will go up. And that if there was a Mortal Empires, I kind of predict that Mortal Empires, that would be like here, is heading towards that direction. That is my prediction, but in its current state, that's where I feel like, because this is not going to go progressing any further. So that, I should have put Mortal Empires red in over there. Again, I haven't played Mortal Empires for Warhammer 3, but that's just a prediction. Okay, so, currently, I would rate Total War Warhammer 3 an 8.5 out of 10, which I think is a really good score. And the main reason it's being reduced is because of the narrative. It's losing pretty much the full point out of it. If it wasn't for the narrative being as bad as I think it is, I probably would have given it something like a 9.5 out of 10. I really like the gameplay of this game, with the exception of the Realm of Chaos stuff. I really don't like that. It detracts from what I actually want to be doing. And I get that what I want to be doing is essentially Mortal Empires, but unfortunately, I would be into the realm. I'm into narrative campaigns. I feel like they did good narrative campaigns in the Vortex campaign with like Snitch's more Vortex campaign. That kind of stuff's really cool. Malice Darkblade one. I don't like Hunt's Martial Expedition or Nakai's campaign. They're awful. I really like Throt's campaign. I think it's awesome. Same thing with Taurox's campaign. The ones that don't go after the Vortex. So I think it's yeah, I think they really need to go. I think they can fix this stuff. I think they just need to give the player a pat on the back for doing this stuff, because that's what it felt like. I got worn out and tired, and I just didn't want to do it anymore. It made me want to stop campaigns going through the Realm of Chaos, and I don't think that's how it should be. But overall, this is where my recommendations would lie. If you have never played a Total War game before and you're interested in getting into Total War Warhammer, my recommendation would be to start with Total War Warhammer 2. Play that. It's an amazing game. There's still tens of thousands concurrently playing it. It's in a great state. It's a good place to learn the game. But if you, like me, have played way too much Total War Warhammer 2, you know, if I bring up my Steam account again, Warhammer 2, I clocked 13,500 hours. You know, I've played too much Warhammer 2. I would recommend Warhammer 3. I think it is a great game with one really big problem that hopefully will be addressed as soon as possible. So I'm definitely going to stick with Total War Warhammer 3. I do recommend it, but I do not think that in its current state it is better than Total War Warhammer 2. But I think that it will be very soon. So that's my review. Let me know in the comments what you think. I hope this review has helped you guys. I appreciate you, and I'll see you next time, fuckers. Bye.